Good afternoon. I'm Lauren Lehman, and I call the Alaska Anchorage Election Commission to order. We have present member Glennis Ireland with me, and Chairman Lisa Torkelson is on her way. We expect her in a few minutes. We don't have a quorum to conduct business, but we're here to listen, and happy for that. Any comment before we get started with the program? Okay. We're not going to deal with minutes of the previous meeting, so we don't have them, and we don't have a quorum anyway. The old business, new business presentation regarding processing the Anchorage voter list for an election.
I didn't test my microphone. Well, thank you for having me. So back in February, I had did a presentation for GIS and the election process for the clerk's office, and was asked to do a somewhat similar presentation today with a little bit more emphasis on how we use GIS to process the voter file that we prepare for the election. So I just wanted to briefly kind of start off with what is GIS. You'll hear that several times in the presentation. So it stands for Geographical Information System. It's a system that creates, manages, analyzes, and maps all types of data. And according to Esri, who's kind of the grandfather of GIS, they say GIS helps users understand patterns and relationships with geographic context. And we use GIS a lot in elections. Most of you will be familiar with the map I'm going to show briefly. This is the Assembly District map where voters can look at which Assembly districts they reside in and who their members are. This is our Dropbox and Anchorage Vote Center map, so voters can look at their nearest Dropbox and Anchorage Vote Center, and our sample ballot map that we create so voters can look what their specific ballot is going to look like. But to be more specific, how we use it to process our file. So every ballot is given what we call a ballot style. These styles are determined by your residence address and service areas. It dictates what voters vote on, such as their assembly candidate or specific propositions. Each area in the muni is separated by boundary lines, and they can be pretty specific depending on what services are provided in that area. For those of you that live in the hillside, you're probably familiar with limited road service areas or WRSAs. Those are great examples of specific services rendered in a specific area. So we currently have almost 200 ballot styles, so it's a lot to maintain and to create. And I know it's a little hard to see, but I just wanted to show a representation of what we're referring to. So this is a ballot from the 2022 election, because when I created this, we weren't ready for 2023 yet. But this is ballot style number 1847 for voters that reside in precinct 125. And you'll notice in addition to the normal assembly district and school board races, this ballot for voters who received 1847 also got to vote on the Rabbit Creek View and Rabbit Creek View Heights LRSA seat. So they had a specific race just for them, and they also had a specific proposition. Proposition 9 was for an annexation and de-annexation of the service area. So just wanted to provide a visual for the specific ballot styles. So then how do we assign said ballot styles? So the State of Alaska Division of Elections provides the municipality with the voter list of all the registered voters within the MOA. And at the same time, MOA GIS has data sets or address points for all of their valid addresses in the municipality. So we use a GIS process that matches those voter addresses in the state file with the MOA address points. And we call this process geocoding. So we're essentially matching what the municipality has on file for this address point with the address that is provided by the state. So if there are any of what we call unmatched voters, so if there's like a typo or a lot of new development hasn't quite gone through the addressing team in the GIS department, we manually look up those unmatched voters to see if it is like a typo or they transpose numbers, and we'll go ahead and clean those up. This is just a little screenshot. I'm a visual person, and I think this is super interesting because I'm a data nerd. This is just a screenshot of what the end result of that geocoding process looks like. So it gives us the matched record count. Again, this was 2022. So this was 233,748. There were 64 unmatched voters, and then this tied match record of 6,103. That just means that there were several voter entries for the same MOA address point, and that's typically for apartment buildings or multifamily homes. So once we have gone through the geocoding and we've matched those address points, and we've done our best to resolve the unmatched voters, it's time to assign the ballot styles. MOA GIS creates ballot style polygons that contain data sets specific for these ballot styles. So again, back to that example of the ballot that I showed that has specific data sets for 1847 that has all the candidate names, the propositions, things like that. So we run it through another GIS process that looks at the geocoded address points, it assigns them a ballot style, and it also generates a file that will be imported into our election system, our election database system. And that's why it's so vital that we take the time to resolve any of these unmatched voters, because if they remain unmatched, they get assigned a -1 ballot style, and therefore they won't be automatically mailed a ballot package. These voters can still vote by voting in person at an Anchorage Vote Center or by calling our voter hotline and requesting a replacement ballot to be sent to them. They can also apply to vote by fax or email. It's also during this step of the process that any voters who will not be 18 by election day are automatically removed, and they will not be loaded into the database. And then again, I'm a visual person, so this is the end result of the ballot style process. So it says that we exported 309,535 records to a specific CSV file. One ineligible record was removed due to birth date, so one person was not going to be 18 by election day. And then there's other condition codes that the state gives that don't really pertain to us. This is also reports that we can get from this system or this process. This on the left is a breakdown of the number of voters per ballot style. So you can see that -1 ballot style, there were 63 voters with that -1 ballot style. And then the image on the right is a breakdown of how many voters per precinct. So once we have our address points matched, they've now been assigned a ballot style. Now we're going to go ahead and import that CSV file into our election system, into Fluence Bluecrest. This is the system that we use for the mail sorter, signature verification, entering temporary addresses, requesting replacement ballots, and curing challenged ballots. And this is the live election, so we're up and running. So once the file is loaded to the system, we create what we call a mailer file for our printing vendor that contains a list of voters that are eligible to be mailed a ballot package. Pursuant to Municipal Code Section AMC 2840-20C, the municipal clerk is not required to mail ballots to any voter that does not have a valid residence address, so the -1s, or is in the condition of purge notice, undeliverable, list maintenance, or list maintenance undeliverable as described in the Alaska statute. Voters with these condition codes are excluded from the mailer file and are not provided to our printing vendor. But like I said, they can obtain a ballot by voting in person, by calling our hotline to request a replacement ballot be sent to them. They can also vote by email or fax. So changes in voter registration. We typically receive 3 voter registration files from the state of Alaska. We received the first file in February, So it gives us plenty of time to start the process and give us time to provide the main mailer file to our printing vendor. We received the second voter file from the state a few days after the voter registration deadline. If there are any updates or changes to voter information, the original ballot package information that was provided to a printing vendor is voided, and a new ballot package ID is now issued with the updated information. If the voter has canceled the registration by the deadline, the printing vendor yanks these voters and they will not mail them a ballot package. The printing vendor is responsible for mailing out packages to voters that are contained in the resulting file. The vendor typically mails out close to 200,000 ballot packages. And since the state needs more than 2 days to process any changes at the deadline, we receive a third file that encompasses those updates. Since it's received right before mail out, it's typically the end of the week after voter registration deadline. It's too late for our printing vendor to make any of the changes or process any of the new information. So the MOA election team sends out these last minute ballot packages from the election center. And this year for 2023, the MOA elections team mailed out approximately 345 ballot packages from here. So it's a lot of information. There's a lot of moving parts. To just summarize, for each of the 3 voter files that we received, we match the MOA address points with the voter addresses provided by the state. We assign each address point a ballot style and also generate that database file. We import that database file into our Fluent/Bluecrest election system, and then we create a mailer file of voters that are eligible to be mailed a ballot package. Again, voters with condition codes UN, LM, PN, and LU are not provided to the printing vendor. So, I'm sure there's questions.
Okay, just before we go to questions, I want to acknowledge that our chair, Lisa Trump, has arrived many minutes ago. Welcome, Lisa. I'm going to give you the hammer. And sitting way in the back here trying to hide, is the Assembly Chair, Chris Constant. Welcome. And of course, welcome to those of here from the public. Appreciate you being here.
My bags are late.
So I think that the questions should just be questions from the commission to staff. If you have any questions about the presentation, there's an opportunity here in a little bit for audience participation.
Okay, are there any questions from the commission?
Well, my question, I think you said it at least a couple of times during the presentation. Voters eligible to vote who may not get a ballot still are given ample opportunity either through media or otherwise to know that there's ballots, there's a way available, a ballot is available to them to vote.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, we do several press releases, and also we do radio. I have hundreds of radio ads, and that is explaining to voters that the ballots have been mailed, and if they don't receive it by a particular date, that they can call and request one, or that the vote centers are open. So there's a lot of media, press releases, social media, radio ads that explain all of that.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to public comment. Are there any comments?
So if I can jump in here really quick, as we're still on our new business, I, at the public session of Canvas, had offered to do this presentation showing everyone how we process the list. And I had also promised to try to create the list of names and addresses of Anchorage voters who were not mailed a ballot. even though it's not a list that we create or maintain. I was going to attempt to create the list, and so I have that to provide to the requester to satisfy that request.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We're back on public comment.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any members of the public who have questions? Yes, go ahead.
Would you come up
Just
and speak?
State your name for the record, please.
Dan Smith.
Yeah.
Dan Smith. And I had questions about how the list was generated. Initially, our attention was drawn to the big difference between the registered voters in Anchorage and those that were receiving a ballot on the list that was provided. So the question that came up was who didn't get a ballot, and now I think I have that. How many names would you say are on here, Jamie?
So you have two different lists on that thumb drive. The first list is people who were in the first file that we received, but they were not in the second file, and so they were yanked. There's 8,092 of those. And then there are people who were both on the first and second files, but their condition codes or maybe their birth date wasn't correct, so they were excluded from being mailed a list, and there's 35,975 of those.
Would you say that probably most of those are, I don't know what I would call them, aged addresses, no longer residing in Anchorage, or at least not having a record of that, having not voted in elections, not responding to communications, kind of all of the above?
Right, the condition code would be LM, so they're in list maintenance, they haven't voted in several years. PN, purge notice, they haven't voted in several years, and they haven't responded to notifications that they're being removed from the list. And then UN is undeliverable, so the mail that has been sent to them by the Division of Elections has been returned to the Division of Elections as undeliverable. And then another code is LU, which means that they are in list maintenance, meaning they haven't voted in a number of years, but their mail is still being returned undeliverable to the Division of Elections. That's the majority of them, yes.
So,
Go ahead. And if I could, and then remember your question so you can ask it. With the state automatic registration on permanent fund dividend filing, if somebody files for a dividend with an Anchorage address, then does that person remain on the list? I think I know the answer, but I'm going to let you answer it.
It's my understanding that they do. It's my understanding that the Division of Elections acquires the data from the permanent fund dividend division over the summer, May or June, and they update voter information from the permanent fund. It's my understanding that there is an opt-out option where they can opt out. And I might be misremembering that. It might be actually with the DMV that they can opt out. But yeah, they do update their voter registration.
So my question had to do with postcards. I might have missed it there, but I seem to remember postcards being mailed out and wondered what the purpose of those postcards, what the purpose was and who gets a postcard. Is that
Are you referring in 2023 or are you any other year?
this year?
In 2023, our purpose for mailing the postcards was to inform voters that their assembly district may have changed because of the redistricting process that was approved in March of 2022. So somebody who may have been in District 5 previously may now be in District 1, or somebody who was close to a border on District 3 or District 6 may have changed, and so it was just advising voters to go look at the map and find out where their district may be.
I should probably back up and just state that all my questions are just because of my inquisitive nature, and I want to understand everything about everything all the time. So nothing here should be conceived as or perceived as adversarial. It's just inquisitive and educational. So don't take offense at any of my questions. I was just wondering if the postcards were an attempt to find out some of those addresses that might be undeliverable or pare down the list through a return process.
Through the chair, I'm happy to continue to answer those questions if you guys have time. Typically, most other years, the postcards are mailed in November, and it is for the purpose of getting them returned, of doing a sort of pre-check on addresses. So if the postcards get returned undeliverable, then we would run them through the sorter and deliver that information to the state so that anybody who's undeliverable would not be sent a ballot because that ballot, the address is undeliverable. And because the state had its own by-mail election in June of 22 and then had a primary and a general election in August and November of 22, we recognized that and they did many mailers, so we recognized that the state's database may have already had quite a bit of work done on it as far as mailing addresses, and so we just took the opportunity to tell voters that their districts may have changed in 2022 and affecting the 2023 election, but typically we do send out a postcard in November for that purpose.
Through the chair. I forgot to do the through the chair thing.
You can ask. This is public comment.
Oh, okay. I didn't know how formal we were supposed to be. So we did have a red wagon in a cage back there full of undeliverable postcards. Are those the ones that were they factored into the decision-making process as to who should not get a ballot? In other words, were they deemed undeliverable and then not sent a ballot?
No, there was not enough time from the time that they were mailed out. They were mailed out the beginning of February, and when we're doing it, we need time to give the state an opportunity to be able to update the voter information. So we typically do it in November when we're doing it for the purpose of.
So that update to the voter rolls kind of has to go through the state then. You have to report that back to the state, and then they give you the new list.
Correct.
Sometimes I get overly focused on numbers, but I think they help me understand things. So my question about postcards comes off the invoice for printing that we did at K&H. And I'm trying to understand how we mailed out 199,421 postcards. But some of those came back undeliverable, but we didn't have time to incorporate those into the new list, if I understand that correctly. So I was expecting the postcards to be a mechanism for paring down the list. But even if it didn't happen, I see that we had 201,029 ballot packages printed. So that's in excess of the postcards that were mailed out by 1,608. But so I'm just wondering how that list grew from the number of postcards we had printed to the number of ballots we had printed. packages that got mailed out. Not counter ballots or anything like that. Sorry.
Through the chair, I think the voter list is a constantly evolving thing. People can update their voter registration anytime. It automatically gets updated sometimes for DMV work that they're doing. It gets updated for the PFD filing at particular times of the year. If they are proactive and they're updating on their own through the online voter registration, it's updated that way. They also might be updated through the Department of Health and Social Services list. Did we get a couple of updates late in the game from public assistance? So I think that from a list, it's not a static thing. It's an ever-evolving thing. It changes dramatically from the list that we received early February to the list that we receive in early March. We try to take a snapshot of time as of March 5th, 2023 for the April 4th, 23 election, and that is the list that we go with.
Well, I can see how you could pick up a couple thousand over that period of time. So I guess what are the qualifications for a person receiving a postcard? You have to be on the RG condition to get a postcard?
Through the chair, when we send them for the purposes of address verification, they're mailed to everyone. For this one, that was for the purposes of advising people that their voter registration or that the district information changed. We mailed to RG and ID.
So no postcards went to LUs or LMs or P?
That were known at the time, but we can see now that several thousand were returned UN.
So the follow-up question, I guess, is what are the qualifications to receive a ballot? I know that we talked about the RGs. Those clearly got a ballot. But after that, there's a number of ballots in addition to that that were mailed out that were not RGs. So I'm wondering how those voters got their ballot. What's the decision-making process or the formula or the GIS system that produces that extra amount of voters that are not RG? Why do they get a ballot?
So I think she showed you the process. There's no decision-making. It's a process, and if a person is in undeliverable status but requests a ballot be mailed to a temporary address, then we would mail that ballot to that temporary address. If a person who is in undeliverable status requests a ballot be emailed to them, we will email them a ballot. If ID simply means that ID is required for them to, in order to vote, and so they need to provide a copy of their ID. It just simply means that they get a different set of instructions in their envelope. I think that the chair is probably trying to extend the meeting, or...
Yes, you need to have a motion to extend the meeting to finish answering questions, because we only had a half an hour.
I'll move to extend, but I won't be able to stay but just a few more minutes. I have a group of high school students waiting for me to arrive to grade their capstone presentations.
So how many minutes? 7?
Yeah, I'll move to extend. What do we need? 10 minutes? You think?
Yeah, are there other people who have comments in the audience?
I can yield the
Okay,
mic.
one more? 2 more? Okay, how about we do 10 minutes and 5 minutes each? for the next two people. Okay, we have a motion to extend the meeting by 10 minutes to allow 2 more people to speak. Do I have a second? A second. I have a second to that motion. Any opposition? Hearing none, we'll extend.
Hi, I'm Bruce Graham, and the first thing I'll say is, I don't think anybody's doing anything nefarious, and everyone is acting in good faith. I've been down here lots of times. I think we just have questions as citizens concerning, the elections have changed quite a bit from maybe as little as 5 or 10 years ago as to how votes are counted, et cetera, to mail-in voting, and it's a little bit confusing. So my first question is regarding the 35,972 people who did not receive a ballot. I'm still kind of unclear on that. Do we know if that same number of people also did or did not receive a ballot in the statewide election in the fall?
I don't have state information.
Okay, I think that'd be an interesting fact to know. And I guess I'm still confused. I watched your presentation, and I think you said something like 300 people were -1 and didn't receive a ballot or something to that effect.
No, and the example I provided, it was a snapshot of like 63 people had -1.
Okay. So I guess I'm confused. This seems like a huge number of people that didn't get ballots. And I know you described the process, but it's still confusing to me how that number could be so big and how you could arrive at who gets a ballot and who doesn't based upon that. So it's still confusing to me. But I also think that what people really want in this country, just here in Anchorage, no matter where it is to have faith in their election process. And I think it's great that there's observers that come down here from both sides, or however many there are, because it's citizens being able to be part of their government process. And I think that's really all people are asking for, is that we can have faith in the process. And when people are here observing or testifying like this, it doesn't mean we think somebody's cheating or anything like that. But there's questions, that's a huge number of people that didn't receive a ballot. Now, of course, that taken in context, the state of Alaska has, 730 some odd thousand people, of which 545,000 are over the age of 18 and therefore technically eligible to vote. Yet we have 595,000 people on the voter list. So I can see where a lot of those would be in Anchorage. And, I commend your efforts to try to clean up the voter rolls, because that's part of transparency, and so that's a good thing. But it just seems odd. I guess my other question is, in the last muni election, was that a similar number that did not receive a ballot? 30, almost 36,000, do you know?
I don't have that information right handy. If you email me the question, I can look it up.
Okay, it's just be good to be able to compare it to past elections, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments? Go ahead and state your name for the record.
Brenda Hayes.
Brenda Hasty.
So a couple of things. Just from sitting here listening, I picked up on one more discrepancy that just happened. One of the questions Dan Smith had was the number of postcards that are mailed out go out to all voters. There isn't any discrimination between voter groups that postcards are mailed. So from the invoicing, we saw that just over 199,000 postcards would have been mailed. But according to the voter rolls at that time, there were over 235 registered voters. So that's one of the things I picked up just now. In the last, the public session of Canvas, there was comment made about, some of the discrepancies that we had found in the 1,948, what we think was additional ballots that were mailed out. It was explained then that there were 1,800 duplicates that were mailed out, that were identified and mailed out in apparently the 2 days, day and a half since Dan had submitted the appeal to the commission, that weren't able to be identified prior to ballots being mailed out. I have not been able, in an analysis of that data, have not been able to come up with that number of duplicates, the same number of duplicates, but some of that could be to Ascension number or voter ID. So the public isn't given the access to voter ID numbers, but there is an Ascension number. One more discrepancy that was made at the public session of Canvas was that Ascension numbers changed, which made finding the duplicates difficult. Ascension numbers, as verified by the state of Alaska, are unique to the voter. They do not, it's not a variable number. So I'm having a really difficult time understanding how those duplicates, again, the number is varying. I haven't been able to reproduce that 1,800 duplicate from analyzing the data that's been provided so far. So there's that. I hope that the commission had time to review Dan's packet. That was his appeal, that when you didn't have enough time to read before it was presented to you at the public session of Canvas. There was a lot of good information in there that I hope is not overlooked, because I think there were voters that were maybe displaced.
It's 4:10 and the commission meeting needs to adjourn because we no longer have a quorum to extend beyond 4:10.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn? Or,
We can't move, we're just adjourned.
oh, okay, we're adjourned.